This is the last Monday technical talk of the season. So welcome everybody. It's good to see so many faces here tonight, or this afternoon. So today we have a rather special offering for you. We have one of our very own board members, Lee Wallace, who's going to tell us all about a new code of practice, rubber stamped by the AiS, but very much in conjunction with the industry, around security fogging. And rather than steal any of Lee's thunder, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll apologise regarding the presentation. I'm not very good at PowerPoint, so I had to enlist the services of my 12-year-old son, who told me that I need to put lots of jazzy transitions in. He did want to put some animation in there, but I prevented him from doing so. So if there's a few funky things that happen, that's a 12-year-old, not me. He's a little bit better than I am at that. As I mentioned, I'm here. I'm talking on behalf of the AiS, I guess, with regards to the code of practice for my day job. I work for TH March insurance brokers, who are specialist jewellers to the jewellery trade, amongst other things, because we're famous for insuring jewellery and so much more. I have a very strong feeling towards the subject I'm going to be talking about. I'm a very big fan of the security fogging industry, which is why I actually got involved with this. And as mentioned, I'm here to be talking about security fog generator code of practice. The reason that we're doing it is because, unfortunately, not all security fogging generators are the same, and not all systems operate as they should. If it would be very simple to turn around and to a risk and say, fine, we have a risk, we want you to put security fogging in there, and somebody goes away and does it and it works perfectly fine. It is a much more complicated situation than that. So it resulted in a few failures, a few issues, and I'll come on to those in a minute. But as I said, not all smoke systems operate as they should. Some are better than others. There's a funky transition for you. That's a smoke system. Actually, that's Tony Soprano, so he might protect your property quite... Anybody watch The Sopranos? He may well protect your property, but in general terms, that's not going to be any... Did I do that? Any good at all. So what we have are some... I've termed them as failures. And they're failures because primarily the systems haven't worked as they were intended to do so. These failures can be due to a large number of reasons: poor system design, poor system performance, partial activation of the fog, and on certain circumstances failure for the fog to activate altogether. And the reasons for that can be a large number of reasons why it doesn't go off. And the whole point of the code of practice is to try and pull it together and try and tighten up on a few things. So the genesis of the AiS code of practice, where did it begin? Effectively, as insurers, we were seeing a few failures where the systems weren't working properly. So we started using a guide to specifying security fogging, which was drawn up, and whilst it was drawn up with all the best intentions, it wasn't fully covering everything that we wanted it to cover. So I was talking to a couple of the fogging companies, and they said we should all get together and try and do something together as an industry. When I was talking to a few other members of the insurance industry, and I mentioned about the possibility of getting everybody together in a room to work together, I was told, Lee, you won't get them all to sit down together, you won't get very far. But that basically is the genesis of it. That's the other genesis. I was explaining to my 12-year-old who they were. I think they're quite good, but there you go. They weren't involved in the drawing up of the practice, but these people were. So as you can see, we got the majority of the industry involved. We've got Fog Bandit, Smoke Cloak, Concept, Smokescreen, Protect, Fog Cannon, and also UR Fog came to a couple of the meetings as well. Also attending a couple of the meetings was the Met Police, NSI, SSIOB, and RISTech. Jocelyn, that's covering your company as well, GJIS, one of our competitors. And that is not deliberate at all, I promise. They were there. So what did we come up with? We came up with basically 2 documents, one covering commissioning and installation, and the other one covering the service and maintenance. A lot of the failures out there could be attributed to one of the 2 situations there. Unfortunately, we've got systems out there and there are many machines out there, so as I said, you can't specify just install a fogging machine, connect it to the alarm system and it's going to protect your property. It's far more complicated than that, and that comes into the commissioning and the installation. There are some alarm companies out there who, in order to win a contract, will quote the cheapest possible piece of kit to think that they have ticked a box from an insurance requirement. And unfortunately, from insurers, we may specify and recommend having security fogging put in, but we do not turn around and say it needs to be to this specification, this requirement, this is what we want it to do. So in the eyes of the alarm companies, well, they're fulfilling a requirement, they haven't been given any more information, they've not been told exactly what they ought to do, so as far as they're concerned, they're all fine. As I said, the commissioning and installation is very important. I have my own personal views on what needs to be done regarding systems performances, because speed certainly, I think, is of the essence. Criminals have a finite amount of time to carry out the robbery that they're intending to commit. The shorter amount of time that we can give them, the shorter amount of time that they have to take what they want, so we need to be filling the area and protecting the property as quickly as we possibly can. Just filling the room is not the be-all and end-all. Density is also very important indeed as well. Primary reason is we are selling and promoting security fogging machines, not security early mist machines, which, you know, that's not going to, if it comes out and you can still see the back of the room, yes, it's filled the area, but the density is also a very, very key part to it. So the system performance requirements, we are to ensure a maximum effectiveness of the security fogging generator. It's a requirement of the code of practice that the system, either a single or multiple fogging generators, because depending on the layout of the premises, you might have one or more machines in there, achieves a room fill or cover it of asset protection area in a maximum of 10 seconds. As I said, speed is key here, to a density level reducing visibility to no greater than 100 centimetres. The 100 centimetres has been chosen as the density level because it's a measure that's used in the existing European standard, that all machines that have been tested to the European standard, part of the test is that it has a performance where that's measured in cubic metres per second output at a metre density. So it's fairly easy then to use that against the volume of the area that you're trying to protect. The other thing important is that we say the 10 seconds is the total time from the detection and activation of the fogging generator when the desired coverage of density is achieved. Some of the machines will have a 1 or 2 minute delay after pressing the button or receiving the activation input before they actually start emitting fog from the machine. We want to make sure that this slight delay is incorporated within the 10 seconds. And this is where it all gets a little bit wordy, and I apologise for that. So as I mentioned, the document that we came up with is here, and we're trying to cover off quite a lot within this, so as I say, I apologise for it being a little bit wordy. I'll go through it as briefly as I possibly can, but a couple of key things on here is that certainly number one, only security fogging generators which have been tested and passed the European standards BSEN 5013-8 by an independent test house will be to installed in conjunction with this code of practice. That is to stop people like myself going into the garage, knocking something up and saying this is absolutely fabulous. Third-party accreditation, I think, is something very important within the security industry and something that's perhaps not called upon as often as it possibly should be. Also, commissioning and installation is to be done only by engineers and technicians who are trained and certified by the manufacturer or supplier of the security fogging generator. Again, it's not a question of just going and plug and play, screw something to the wall and walk away from it. It is a little bit more complicated than that. And the engineers installing it, it's not something that your average alarm engineer who's not seen one before can have a box arrive and go and stick it on the wall and it work properly. There's far more intricacies to that. We've mentioned here that it's up to the manufacturer or supplier to ensure as far as possible the identity of the engineer with a recommendation of certificate cards issued for trained engineers. Some of those have PIN numbers on there, and there are a number of the manufacturers and suppliers that already do that. So that when they're talking to an engineer on the phone, they've got any queries, they'll ask them for their PIN number and they know that they're talking to someone that's had some formal training by the company in the installation of their equipment. Next part on here is the commissioning of the security fogging generator must include a written risk assessment. This is something that certainly all alarm companies should be doing already anyway. So again, not really too much of an issue I don't see under that part of there. Importantly is the risk assessment is done where the alarm company goes in, the engineer will go in, he'll do a risk assessment. It would be incredibly useful if the risk assessment is to be signed by the customer as well, to say that actually what the alarm engineer has come up with is exactly what they are wanting to protect. I know some customers aren't necessarily forthcoming with alarm companies with regards to what they're trying to protect, but as far as possible, if the customer's turning around and saying, yes, you've got it right, that's exactly what I want to protect, then obviously it gives some sort of protection towards the alarm company as well. Because it needs to be fit for purpose. That's a teapot, it will hold tea, but it won't do the job. Exactly the same is for the security fogging systems as well. It has to be fit for the purpose for what it's intended to be used for. This was something I've highlighted in bold number 4. This was something that came from the industry themselves, in that the problem with the failures is that it has weakened faith in the product, both within the customers and the end users out, the public at large, and also with insurers. So this is where we're going to see people and recommending putting security fogging machines in. They'll turn around and say, oh yes, but Joe Bloggs down the road had it and it didn't work and I still lost it. Why am I spending all my money? Insurers are turning around post-loss and we're trying to say to them, look, there's no need to increase the premiums by that much because you've had the loss, they've put security fogging in, and they'll turn around and say, oh yes, but we've just paid out £500,000 on a risk where the security fogging generator didn't go off, didn't work properly. So there's a little bit of faith has been lost within both the insurance industry and I guess with some specifiers and recommenders as well. And number 4 on there is really giving a little bit of control back to the industry. This was an idea not of mine, that came from the industry, where the written risk assessment completed by the trained technician or engineer and accompanying documents are to be sent to the intended manufacturer or supplier of the security fogging generator which is to be used. The manufacturer is then to sign off that the fogging generator being used will be capable of achieving the intended performance and is suitable for the proposed use. If I'm Lee Wallace fog generators, I've got 3 or 4 different machines. I don't want my company getting a bad name because, oh, Joe Bloggs down the road installed a Lee Wallace fog generator and it didn't fill the room quick enough. It didn't act as it should have done. This is giving a little bit of control back to the supplier to say, yes, you've picked the right machine, it's in the right configuration, it's put in the right place. It may well turn around and say, well, you've used our biggest machine, which should fill the room fairly quickly, but if you use a couple of our smaller machines, it might do it even quicker and more efficiently. So it gives a little bit of control back to the industry. Number 5, I think, is also a very key point, where the security fogging generator is to be used to protect people and property in a hold-up situation. Then wearable portable personal attack buttons connected to the fogging generation's activation trigger input are to be issued to the customer. This is very key indeed. In an armed, aggravated hold-up burglary, if your only method of activating the fog is by using a fixed PA button, you've got to get to it. There are many occasions where the members of staff actually can't get to the fixed trigger points. They may freeze, they may be threatened, they're not going to move. We had a very nasty loss in the jewellery quarter up in Birmingham, one of our clients, where 3 guys came through the door for an armed robbery of a jewellery shop. The first guy through the door armed with a hammer. His sole job was to incapacitate the business owner. He leaped the counters with the hammer, swung at the guy's head. Fortunately for the jeweller, he missed. I think if he'd hit him, he'd probably killed him. Swung at his head, he missed, and he then continued to hit him on the ground whilst he was protecting himself, while his 2 friends, shall I say, decided to then attack the window, backs and counters and steal his jewellery. Now, he had security fog in the premises, but he wasn't able to activate it. So a portable worn hold-up attack button would not only protect the premises, but in those circumstances could even have saved his life. Had any of those hammer blows actually connected with his head, it could be a completely different outcome altogether. So it's very important to be able to activate it, because otherwise it's just a box on the wall that isn't doing very much. Mention on here again, audible warning devices are to be installed and appropriate warning notices provided and installed in accordance with the British standard. Almost everything that's in here is probably already in a lot of the BSEN 50131-8, 50131-7 and 50131-1. There's not a lot of new stuff in here, if anything. But the reason I'm putting it in here as well is because this is a guide that we're going to be giving, that I'm recommending is given out to the customers, so that they have a better idea of what they need to be looking for when somebody's coming in and quoting and specifying, rather than being told that actually we've got a lovely British Standards document here, no customer is going to read this. So it's a way of highlighting a few of the key areas within this for the customers to draw their attention to, and that are actually quite key to the system. Again, number 7 on there is on activation. The fog should not create a man trap, and during the robbery situations, activation of the fogging generator should release any electrically operated locks in order for a person to be able to evacuate the premises. This is all already in the standard, but it's drawing the customer's attention to the reasons why the alarm engineer is saying that this needs to be done. Not because he's trying to get more money out of them or anything. It's that it's in the standard, and these things need to be taken into account. It's fairly self-explanatory, because you don't want to trap the man with the hammer in the shop any longer than it needs to be. Again, the fogging generator is required to have visual and or audible systems of fault reporting of all malfunctions which may prevent the system from operating correctly. Some of the failures can be attributed to fog fluid level being low. How many activations have there been? When was the last time the fog fluid was replaced? Power failure obviously is fairly self-explanatory. And we've also had a couple where the alarm engineer has been in to service the alarm system. He's had to isolate the fogging generator, and then when he's finished his job, he's forgot to switch it back on. And obviously we want some sort of audible or visual system of noting that the system has been isolated and needs to be switched back on. Where it is connected to an intruder alarm up system, this can be reported on the keypad in order that the alarm system can't be set until it has been switched back on. Again, in the general standard, local fire and police has been notified of the installation. Number 10 is important, and this is, I guess, as important for the customer as well as any alarm engineer, that any changes made to the fogging generator activation system, such as changing the alarm equipment, but relocation, reorientation of the fog generator, but also the premises furniture. How has that changed? Have cabinets been put up? Has a new air conditioning extractor fan been put right over where it's going to emit from? These sorts of things. And all the changes that must be documented and copied to the manufacturer and log, who can sign off to turn around and say, yeah, that's fine, everything should still work as you intended it to do so. Couple of recommendations there, which there's one on there about the maintenance contract with regard to the physical inspection. That was originally put in as a recommendation, but I think it's almost certainly a requirement, and I'll come on to that in a second. But things like ensuring all members of staff at the installation premises are fully trained in the operation of the system, so they know what to expect, what's going to happen. Again, false alarms, end users should be trained in basic diagnostics and advised who to call in the event of a false activation. There are occasions where a fogging system has been installed into a premises independently of the alarm system. Do the staff on the premises know that it's not the alarm company they need to phone and the fog generator company that's come along and installed it as an independent standalone system? And there are quite a number of occasions where a standalone system is basically all that a customer needs. I'll give a very brief example of one. Again, in the jewellery trade, we have a lot of jewellers, primarily in the 22 carat gold industry, who put 98% of their gold away in the safes at night. They don't need the fog generator system to protect the premises at night. They've got some fantastic safes that do that. They're interested in it, protecting them in the hold-up situation, so all they really want are the radio PA buttons. So they don't always have it connected to the intruder alarm system. Strongly recommend that they do, but they don't always do that, and that would be one reason why. Service and maintenance. When was the last time the machine was serviced? When was the last time an engineer had a look at it? It sits on the wall behind a suspended ceiling in a cabinet somewhere, but it needs to be very much serviced on a regular basis. And whilst I put it initially in as a recommendation, it was then changed to a requirement that the fogging generator is subject to the following checks at least once every 12 months and serviced in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. Again, going back to the fluid levels, if you've had a couple of false activations, have the fluid levels been topped up. If you've had an actual activation, have the fluid levels been topped up. And we obviously need to make sure that the fluid levels are replenished the moment the fog generator is incapable of performing a full activation. So what I came up with, what I asked all the manufacturers and suppliers that were involved in the setting of this up, I asked them to send me all a copy of their service document. So I thought that it would be a good idea to collaborate all the service documents into one document, which an engineer could then work through. So I've kind of put them in the sort of, I'm not an alarm engineer, there might be a few things out of place, but this is sort of in the format in which an alarm engineer may work through progressively through a service of a machine. Whilst it's not showing on there, we would have it as a document that the engineer can turn around and say whether it's completed, yes or no. As I said, it's an amalgamation of a number of service documents, so a lot of the things on there may be not applicable to the machine that they're looking at, and also any other comments. Certainly one in particular that I'll come on to in a moment is often an issue with some customers, albeit I don't think necessarily it should be, but there's room there for an engineer to comment and also get the customer to sign. But in general terms, isolate the fog generator from the intruder hold-up alarm. That'll be number 1. I think you can guess what will be number 29, which will be to switch it back on. But in the meantime, put it in service test mode, check the fog generator for signs of damage, check fixings to ensure nothing's been moved or critically reorientated. Check adequate ventilations around machine and specific requirements. Check. One of the issues has been the fact that some of the fogging generating machines haven't ejected properly or not at all because the nozzles have been blocked for various reasons, primarily because they haven't been serviced properly. Not necessarily an issue with the machines at all, but you know, is the ejection nozzle free from obstruction and blockages because it hasn't been serviced and cleaned, or has somebody actually deliberately blocked it? And again, check the LED indicators working correctly, obviously check mains cable correctly, error messages, heater and temperature accordance with manufacturer specifications. Number 11 again is a very key issue, is that we need to check that the alarm input connections on the machine are secure and correct. And you need to check that all alarm output trigger equipment are working correctly and communicating with the fog generator. There have been a couple of occasions where the activation mechanism, the trigger, for some reason or another, be it a faulty relay or something else, hasn't actually communicated with the fogging generator. And so these need to be checked at least once a year to make sure that all the triggers that could generate an activation are actually still doing that. Ejection time is set correctly in accordance with the installation, location requirements and commissioning certificate. Again, if this is done incorrectly, whilst a manufacturer or supplier could turn and say, yep, that machine's fine, but if the ejection's only set for 3 or 4 seconds, it's not going to do the job it's intended to do. Again, some of the things that won't be applied to all of them are pressure switches, cylinder plates, there's reference to an O-ring, and again, I've mentioned it again, but check the fluid bladder bottle container, content is sufficient, recommended at least 2/3 full, and at least sufficient for one activation of the fog timer, plus 20%, to give a little bit of leeway there. Again, replace fluid bladder or bottle in accordance with manufacturer, the date the next due to be replaced. If these machines are sitting on the wall nicely with no activations, do some of the fluids go off? Do they need replacing intermittently anyway, even if there's not been any false activations or live activations? So these are all fairly basic checks for the engineer to work through, as I said, in the order that he may or may not want to go through it. There's things on there as well with regarding the check the strobe is functioning workily. Some fogging systems have an additional strobe light in the premises as well, which emphasises and makes it appear a lot denser. Voice warning working correctly and audible throughout the fog protected premises. Obviously check ducting aligned and seals intact and there's no leaks. Number 28 is one that is quite contentious for some customers, and that is the conduct of a live fog ejection test fire. There's a number of companies out there who have had the fog generators installed into their premises, but for business interruption reasons have turned round and said that they will refuse to let there be a test fire. Personally, I don't see a reason why that should happen. I mean, we're only talking about once or twice a year. It can be after hours, and the manager of the premises, we're not talking a full test fire necessarily. They may want to have a full test fire to make sure it's working properly, but it might only be for a few seconds, and it doesn't need to take hours if you then ventilate the premises properly. And we need to ensure that a fog generator isolation switch is returned to the normal live position and obtain additional engineer signature and also the customer signature to say this has been done. As I mentioned before, when you've isolated it and switched it off, please, it needs to be made sure that it's switched back on. So that is very quickly and very briefly the code of practice in a nutshell. As I said, there's nothing in there that's revolutionary. There's no fantastic ideas that I've been able to come up with that will turn around and completely change everything. But it's a code of practice at the moment. And so what is the next step? Existing standards. Again, a lot of what's in there is already covered off with the existing standards, primarily in the normative section, but there is some in the informative as well. So the next step, as far as I see, is to firm up the standards, and this is something that we will be looking to do in conjunction with help from the BSIA, help with the British standards, and help with the industry to actually get these formalised. We don't want to go down two different routes to the existing standards. They are being changed and updated on a regular basis. And what we don't want as a code of practice is to be in one position and have these standards somewhere completely different. I'm not aware that there's much in there that is well, I don't think there's anything in there that's in conflict with the existing standards. Some of it might be in the informative, some of it might be in the normative, some of it's in -1, -7, -8, but it's all there somewhere. And why do we want the standards to be changed? The primary reason for getting the standards changed is so that there can be some sort of enforcement. Once the standards are changed, they can then be enforced and inspected to by the the industry inspectorates, the NSI and the SSAIB. There are a couple of things that probably will not go into the code of practice, but if this can be then mopped up with the help of the NPCC and updated and taken into the PD 662 as that's updated, then the inspectorate can inspect to those as well. The sort of things I see going into that will be the fact that the design is to be signed off by the supplier and a few other bits and pieces along those lines as well. And this is a slide I used for something else, but the bottom one at is the one I wanted to focus on. Despite Hatton Garden, criminals aren't stupid. Generally, they can be intelligent. They can be very organised. They identify the target. They do the homework. They carry out a risk assessment, and importantly, they often commit crime with professionalism. And the bottom part there, speed and efficiency. On the first instances of the security fogging generators being installed, all the business owner needed to do was activate the fog, the criminals would see the fog and they'd leave. Very quickly, they became aware that if the fog wasn't filling very quickly at all, they've still got time to get what they want. The element of surprise had gone, they were expecting it, and they knew they had a finite amount of time. One example of this was a jewellery robbery again in Birmingham, where a gang of 10 criminals did a jewellery robbery in the daytime. They were very efficient, they had planned it. Each guy that came through the door knew exactly which cabinet they were going for. They knew there was a fogging system in there. They knew they only had a certain amount of time to get what they wanted. So one guy couldn't attack 3 cabinets. So if we want 3 cabinets, we'll send 3 guys in to do it. They were very successful. They got away with £1 million worth of jewellery, albeit half of them were caught because they were using a number of vehicles. But that is an example of them doing their homework, being a bit professional, being very pre-planned. Every guy that went through the door knew exactly where they were going and what they were doing. Don't panic, folks. They've got the AiS there in front of us. You can make up your own mind who's who within the AiS board. It's something that I personally strongly believe in. I'm a huge fan of security fogging generators, but they have to work properly. And I think this is a very good example of the industry acknowledging that there's a potential problem, that there is a diminishing faith in the products that they're trying to sell, and it is a very good product and a way of working together to try and eliminate the poor practice, which unfortunately does go on in the marketplace. Any questions?
If anyone has any questions, is this on? It is now. If anyone has any questions, I'll have to throw you this. Any questions?
Stunned silence. Mike.
You have to use this, I'm afraid, Nick.
When's it starting?
Straight away.
Can we use it now?
Yeah.
Can we ask for it now?
Yeah. I mean,
Do the
I
industry
plan.
actually agree that we're with what we're asking them to do?
As far as I'm aware, the industry, there's no real objections to what we're trying to do. We have the support of everybody that I've mentioned so far in going forwards. Obviously, the thing that we want to do is to get the standards changed and get it incorporated into the MPCC policy and get it inspected too. This is something that will hopefully come fairly quickly. But in the meantime, the whole point of having the code of practice is for us to be able to turn around and say, you need to install the security fogging machine generator and we want it to adhere to this. It's an independence, so it's not just one company turning around and saying this is what we would do and that would then conflict with what another one would recommend. I have the support of the people that I've mentioned. They're all fairly happy to work to it, and in the nicest sense, there's nothing new there. It's just tying it all together into one document for people to be able to use, for the customer to understand the importance of some of the issues that are there, to make sure the engineers are not quoting the cheapest products but are quoting the appropriate product, to make sure that it's serviced properly, to make sure that the alarm system is communicating with it efficiently. So as far as the AiS are concerned, it is an AiS approved code of practice for us to go and specify when recommending security fogging generators to have it installed in accordance with the AiS code of practice, and it's something fairly easy for the end customer to understand as well. And it's something that we will certainly be putting up on the website.
Are you going to push this through the NAG, or whatever they call themselves now?
Certainly going to be pushing it through the NAG, certainly going to be pushing it within the jewellery industry, very much so. It's something, well, they're the NAJ now because they merged, the NAG merged with the BJA, so they're now the National Association of Jewellers, in case anybody doesn't know who they are. And yes, it's absolutely something that's going to be pushed, certainly from TH March's point of view, certainly from GGIS's point of view, the other jewellery insurance broker in the room, and the underwriters as well.
I think you get total support from the jewellery underwriters as well, so there's no problems there. Do the industry realise what we're asking them to do? Do they agree with it?
Yes, they do. By and large, I don't think there's anything there that they vehemently disagree with, because it's all there. There's not a lot. There's not a lot there, and the best thing about what happened was we all sat in the room together. We all had the general discussions, and I would love to say that I didn't come up with anything that's on there. All that's on there was suggestions from the industry. The suggestion that they sign off the designs came from a manufacturer there. The ID cards for the engineers used by one of the manufacturers already. It's all there, and what we're trying to do is I want to cut out the cowboys, cut out the guys that don't know what they're doing, buy a machine off eBay, install it, and then a customer's wasted their money. And it also levels the playing field for the alarm companies out there. It will hopefully put some more faith back into the industry, where we can then turn around and say, Yes, there have been a number of failures, but we haven't had any failures of machines that have been installed to the code of practice. You can never, the code of practice is in a best case scenario in terms of, with all the best will in the world, you can specify a machine to go into a premises, but if somebody rips the whole front of the building away with a JCB, it's going to leak out into the atmosphere, and it may not cover as best as you can. But for the normal run-of-the-mill type issues, the machines work well. When they're installed, they work well, and we've seen time and time again losses greatly reduced, if not eliminated, when it's worked well. But we've also seen payouts of £500,000 plus where it hasn't worked. Yes, Paul.
Hold on a minute. I'm under strict instructions here.
Hey. It's amazing. You said it had support of all of the people mentioned. Can you say who it has support from?
It has support from Fog Bandit, it has support from Protect Fog Cannon, it has support from Smoke Cloak and Smoke Screen, and also UR Fog. The people that were in the room, by and large, support it. For example, Richard Beale can't be here from Smoke Cloak. He has a few issues with his parent company supplying the machines to him in terms of getting their backing of it, but he's turned around to me and said that as far as he is concerned, in the event of a code of practice being presented to him, that absolutely they will follow it.
The people I was mainly thinking of were installers. What installation companies have been involved and supported it?
I've spoken to a couple of installation supporters. I've spoken with a couple of alarm companies, and they've turned around and said absolutely they're fine. The installer, what are we asking the installers to do which they shouldn't already be doing? They should already be doing the written risk assessment. They should already be servicing it properly. They should already be specifying the correct machine to fill the void. There's nothing there that we're asking them to do other than use trained engineers and send it back to the manufacturers for acceptance. The issues that some of the installers would have is that some of the smaller installers might turn around and say, you know, I only install 1 or 2 of these a year. You know, I haven't got a trained engineer. My argument would be that the marketplace absolutely needs these small alarm companies out there, but should they necessarily be the company installing a product which is for a high-risk premises, ultimately. As I say, jewellers, it could be cigarettes, tobacco, alcohol, or anything else.
I mentioned that because I am aware, well, one, I can't speak on behalf of all of the installation companies, but I am aware that several of the things you've mentioned as being normal practice are the kind of things that they argue against vehemently.
Right.
Also,
such as?
Also, I know some major companies who don't like some of the things you've suggested. So I feel you don't necessarily have their support.
What are the things that they're objecting to?
Yeah, well, the issue of having engineers trained in the individual products, which means that you'd have to assign either all of their engineers would have to have training on all of the products they're likely to use, or they can only send certain engineers to certain sites, which means that particularly sort of an out-of-hours service issues, you'd have problems.
I would argue that this is not all the fogging generator machines are the same. As I said, the service checklist, for example, amalgamated a lot of things on there without the proper training on the installation.
I'm not saying what you're saying is bad. I'm just saying they may not be happy with it. So to say that you've got their support may be misleading.
Okay, so fine.
Yeah.
But I don't see that they should necessarily have an issue with it.
Can I?
I mean, of any alarm companies that are in the room, is there anything there that you see that would necessarily be an issue? I mean, it's
just one other point.
Also, if it's all already in the standards, i.e. in the normative or the informative, they should really be doing it anyway.
And surely if they don't do it, there's a loss, they're liable.
Well,
We just sued one of the big large
I think that
sued and lost.
I think that could be one of the issues, is the fact that if you ask somebody to carry out a risk assessment, then they're effectively taking on some onus for the activity, and therefore they would put themselves into a position of liability, which they may not have all of the valid information. But the second question, if you don't mind, was the idea of sending the risk assessment to a third party, in this case the manufacturers.
Yeah.
Presumably there's going to be some sort of arrangement by which the people receiving that information have got some security checks and been vetted to make sure that they're they shouldn't not be handling customer information.
I haven't gone through that, so I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know who will be going through these checks at the manufacturers.
I know it's something we have a mechanism for in the UK, but
I don't know. Is the answer to that?
We do.
Yeah. Yes.
try this.
Yes.
I won't throw it.
Lee, as you know, I'm Andrew's guest this evening. I'm from Criterion, insurance loss adjuster, so I've had a sort of an interest in this subject after the event almost. I spend most of my time doing jeweler's block losses, but also a lot of losses in the antiques trade. And it's not a question, it's more an observation, because obviously I see things when they're not gone well, put it politely. And so smoke cloaks, etc., have an interest for me. I've had a couple of scenarios where they've not activated, even though there's nothing wrong with them, and it might be something you want to add to your checklist, maybe 28 or 29, in that the setup I've seen is for antique dealers who are not high street based, so they'll often have quite a large house, they'll have a converted barn or something like that in the grounds, which is fully alarmed and all the rest of it. But because they're not on a high street, they have a very detailed website, so you can effectively scroll around their whole dealership. Clock dealers as an example, quite common. And you touched on the fact the feeds are obviously very efficient and fast, and that's what they're using to plan their attack. The scenarios I've come across are where they've accessed the keys to the barn, so they've broken into the house, taken the keys, so they've actually entered through the final exit door in the correct way. They don't know the code, so they've only got a small window before it actually goes off. Unbeknown to the policyholder, I've had a couple of these, the smoke cloak trigger for that sort of entry has been set further back, so maybe 2 minutes, for example. And so because they've targeted it and planned it very well, they're actually out before it goes off.
So, certainly at the very least, they will have the entry-exit route timer before anything's going to happen.
Now if they'd broken in, so for example, they'd broken through a window, it would have gone off immediately. Now, on the 2 or 3 occasions I'm thinking of, the policyholder had no idea that was what was set up. So I think as part of your checklist, you want to have the fact that the client or policyholder is fully aware of the setup, the anticipations, that sort of thing.
I'll certainly can make a note of that. The issue there is a greater issue with the whole way alarm systems are set up, and be it target goods that are on an entry-exit route. To my mind, there shouldn't really be any target goods on an entry-exit route. There is a way around it, and that is by the use of shunt locks and external proximity readers. So there is no entry-exit timer, and so any breach through the final entry-exit door, you will get immediate activation. It will be a confirmed system, so you'd want 2 detectors to go off, because you want on there, as you do with the police response anyway is a confirmed system, but if 2 detectors go off, you don't have an entry-exit route. And that, again, is more to do with system design. And you would have that in the event of, if the system's there to protect things out of hours, are there any target goods on the entry-exit route? If there are, you want to get rid of the entry-exit route. A retail shop is a prime example of that. Where we have shunt locks fitted indoors, and where it's not possible to fit a shunt lock on the door, we have external proximity readers. So there is no entry-exit route. And that is a perfectly viable way around of doing it. Ultimately, again, I'll throw it at some of the alarm companies that when they're doing their risk assessments, because the way the police respond to intruder alarm systems, the police policy is set up, is that they require, initially they required 2 activations off the entry-exit route, and now they only require 1 activation off the entry-exit route plus the expiry of the entry timer, which basically means if a criminal comes in, stays on the entry-exit route, the police won't be called at all. So if that's where your target goods are, i.e. a retail shop, there shouldn't be an entry-exit route there. Again, the same for a barn or a store or an antique centre. You know, where is the entry-exit route? What's actually being set up? Where are the target goods? And that again probably falls more towards the risk assessment that the intruder alarm company should be carrying out. And it's not as if there's no way around it. There is a way around it.
Good. Any more questions from the floor? No. Okay. Well, we are approaching 5 o'clock. Some very good questions, and I think some good feedback. As ever with a code of practice, this thing is never completely right first time. These things evolve, and there's an opportunity to take advantage of your feedback from the audience here to maybe build in some further safeguards. So thank you very much for that. So I think if we can thank Lee in the normal way. Now, I think I'm right. Graham Hazelwood, you are here. Yes, I think you just wanted to grab 5 minutes of time. Okay, do you want to come up? Is it best if he talks through the lectern here? Yeah? I think so. I think that's on. Is that still on?
I'm not going to say testing. I just did.
But you did.
Sorry, I'm Graham Hazelwood from NSI, and I'm only going to take up a moment of your time before my voice completely goes. I just wanted to ask your opinions and get some feedback on one of our products. You may or may not be familiar with our directory of installation companies and ARCs, which up until 2014 we produced in a hard copy version. Has anybody seen this before? Nodding of heads. Oh, that is a relief. 2 years ago we made a bold move, and we moved from the hard copy version to a downloadable PDF version, which is on our website, which hopefully some of you have seen and downloaded too. We are now looking at actually trying to import all of the information that's in here into our search engine as we're upgrading our website. So all I want to do is, after the event, is just to have a wander around and see whether there are any features that you would like included in that search engine to better shape it to your needs, particularly in the insurance sector. So that's all I've got to really say. There's no sort of Q&A or anything like that. But afterwards, when we're having a cup of tea, if I could have a wander around and maybe collect a couple of business cards and get some feedback from you about that, that would be marvellous.